Welcome everyone, my name is Rigel and today I want to talk about what we know so far about Junior Eurovision 2023. Now, before I get into that, yes, I am supposed to be releasing another episode of the Eurovision 2023 full review. I was supposed to talk about the statistics, but for one, I haven't actually finished collecting the data yet, and also I've just got more stuff to do now, so yeah, I haven't had the time to record that. So yeah, that's coming soon, I promise. But basically, yeah, I've literally got work to do now in the summer, so I can only really record on weekends or like public holidays. So yeah, rest assured though, I have plenty of video ideas and I hope I can record all of them this summer. So for now though, I want to talk about Junior Eurovision 2023 because while most Eurovision YouTubers would probably take a break for the summer because, though Eurovision 2023 is over, for us hardcore Euro fans, there is no break to the Eurovision season because Junior Eurovision this year will take place in France in the city of Nice on the 26th of November. Now, you might be able to see on the slide there, I wrote Nice racist question mark. Well, actually, according to French Eurofans, that is actual Eurofans living in France, according to them, Nice is actually a really like racist city. According to them anyway, that if you're not white, you'd probably get called slurs on the street. So, if you're a Eurovision fan and you don't look outwardly European, just be careful, okay? But what we do know for sure, or well, actually not for sure, but according to pretty strong rumors, Nice was actually planned for 2021. Basically, France Télévisions didn't want to host in Paris, but because of COVID, they didn't really want the kids going any further than Paris, so they had to do it in Paris. But obviously this year, the COVID situation is a lot better, so they decided let's do it in Nice finally. So specifically, it's going to be at the Palace Nikaya, which is a stadium with I think about 8,000 capacity, which is pretty big, at least for Junior Eurovision standards. So yeah, it's going to be at the Palace Nikaya, and it's going to be on the 26th of November, which is interesting because previous years have seen it usually in December. In fact, last year it was so late that they actually tied in a whole Christmas theme to it. But this year, I think due to the fact that some of the kids were getting sick in December and losing their voice a little bit. Freya Sky and also Sophie Lennon to a lesser extent. They were getting sick because it was kind of cold in Yerevan, obviously. So because of that, they decided, I think, because of that they were going to push the whole event quite a bit earlier. And also in terms of the timing, there's a little bit of confusion because what I'm seeing here, this image at the bottom, I'll read it out real quick. Junior Eurovision fans should clear their diaries for Sunday, 26th November at 1600 CET because that's when the competition will take place in the host city, Nice. Now, there's been an image going around Twitter and also Discord, actually, which is they actually listed the event time as 8 p.m. or 2000 hours, which is weird because normally Junior Eurovision takes place at 4 p.m. So there's been a bit of confusion, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be just 4 p.m. I mean, certainly 8 p.m. would be closer to prime time maybe, but at the same time you also miss out on a lot of kids watching Junior Eurovision because they might have to go to bed earlier than that, or well, go to bed at that time. So I reckon it probably still just is 4 p.m. or again 1600 CET. So we'll see what happens, but I'm pretty sure it's 4 p.m. And also they also announced the slogan for Junior Eurovision 2023, which last year it was actually I think last year was Imagine, and then this year it's Heroes. Not to be confused, of course, with the 2015 Swedish Eurovision entry, which won the contest in Vienna. They also, at the press conference, which was held on the 10th of May, which, yes, was right between this first semifinal and the second semifinal. They did this press conference where they announced these details. They also had a really like dramatic trailer for the thing, and one thing that's unique about this actually was pointed out on the draft Wikipedia article of this is that this is the first time that the Eurovision heart has actually been used for Junior Eurovision, which is very interesting. As in for the logo, as you can see here. So yeah, with that said, let's move on to the countries that will participate in the contest and the countries that might participate or just will not. So with that said, let's get on to the countries. You can see here is pretty much all just countries that were already in Yerevan. Armenia, they're probably doing an internal thing. France as well. Georgia are doing Ranina, which is they're pretty much like kind of yearly Junior Eurovision national selection. And actually, as of recording this tonight, they are having their semi-final of Ranina. And I'll read out the names real quick. There's 5 of them. There's Tako Tomashvili, Soso Chachua, Anastasia Berishvili, Anastasia Vasadze, and Gabriel Lomsadze. So, out of these 5, 3 of them will advance to the final of Ranina, and one of them will eventually become the Georgian representative at Junior Eurovision 2023 and will travel to Nice. So, just to recap, their first names are Taco, spelled with a K, not a C, Soso, Anastasia B, Anastasia V, and Gabrielle. So, you can stay tuned to that if you're interested. But after they, after they have the results of Ranina, it will still be a couple more months before we get the actual song. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we also have Germany, who this year are returning after taking a year off and not showing up in Yerevan. This year, they actually already kind of announced some of their plans, and those plans are basically just they're going to internally select their candidate. Because previously, I think they had a little quasi-national final thing, or rather just some singing contest that they used kind of as a de facto national final. But this year, they're going internal, which is interesting. And the commentator is likely to still be Kanzi, whose full name is Konstantin Zöller. You might know him better for the random stuff that he did at the turquoise carpet after party, where among other things he asked Blanca what she thought of human rights violations in Venezuela. He went to annoy Martin Osterdahl and said something like, "I'm ready to go. Are you ready to go with me?" or something like that. And then after that, he had Riley sit on his shoulders to look for Marco Mengoni, and then another thing was he took off his belt, tied one end loosely around his neck, and then gave the other end to Diliao, and then he said, "Now you have the power over me." Among other things, but yes, he is the Junior Eurovision commentator for Germany. I assume he's a lot more he's a lot more safe on there, so I certainly hope so. I don't watch German Junior Eurovision commentary, so I wouldn't know. But yeah, Germany are having an internal selection for their candidate for Nice. And with that, let's move on to Ireland, who are probably having their national final on TG Cahir, or if you're an English speaker, TG4. yeah, they're having their national final on TG4 as usual, where it's spoken in Irish for the most part. Although they do often get guests who come on to as like guest judges, but those don't necessarily speak Irish. Like I think Brooke was on one of the episodes last year. So yeah, they're having a national final. Ireland, it's actually like a couple weeks long, but we don't know the exact dates yet. And then after the national final doesn't necessarily have original songs because after the winner of the national selection is found, it takes a couple more weeks for them to basically find a song for the singer. So yeah, with that said, we also have Italy, which is just one of the big five countries taking part this year. If all goes as planned, it's probably going to be an internal selection, so we don't really have much to speculate on. For Malta, they're having their national final MJESC, which is taking place on the semifinal is taking place on the 12th of August, and then the final is taking place on the 15th of September. So if you're interested, you can mark these dates in your calendar for MJESC or Malta Junior Eurovision Song Contest. With that said, let's move on to the Netherlands, who are having their Junior Song Festival, which has had its candidates announced just yesterday as of recording this. So you can check those out if you're interested. After that, we have the North Macedonia, who are very interesting because I don't know how often you have countries take part in junior but not adult Eurovision. You know, usually it's the other way around with countries like, for example, the Czech Republic, or Czechia as they're now known. But yeah, usually countries, they take part in adult Eurovision and not junior, but this time North Macedonia is doing it the other way around, as obviously they didn't show up in Liverpool, but they were able to afford to do Junior Eurovision, interestingly enough, and in fact have become the first country to announce their candidate, which is a 12-year-old girl named Tamara Grujewska. This was found after a series of live auditions, so the vocals, the live vocals are probably going to be okay, and we don't really know when the song is going to come out. All we know right now is that Tamara Grujewska, who is 12 years old, will be representing North Macedonia in Nice. So after that, we have Poland, who are doing their usual national final, Szansa na Sukces. Actually, one thing that's interesting is that for some time, Szansa na Sukces was actually a national final for adult Eurovision, but now they've kind of delegated it, I guess, to junior, while for adult they have that national final with the long ass name, you know, to be a Setze Europei Wybieramy hit na Eurowizję. And then we have Portugal, who aren't officially confirmed yet. However, it's kind of implicitly understood that the winner of The Voice Kids, or at least whoever is not past the age limit and has placed the highest in The Voice Kids Portugal, will represent Portugal at Junior Eurovision 2023. Now, there's some news about this, and that's actually... do you remember Joana Almeida from Junior Eurovision 2019? Well, she actually tried again for The Voice Kids this year, but has been eliminated, so we will not be seeing Joana Almeida return to represent Portugal at Junior Eurovision. So, depending on who you ask, that might be a shame. So yeah, just letting you know what's going on that front. So with that said, let's move on to Spain, who are they're not having a national final despite previous talk of having one. This year they're just doing like a casting, and in fact a couple of days ago, as of recording this, they have opened submissions for casting. So you know, if you're Spanish and you have a kid who is interested, then go for it. And then after that, we have Ukraine, who are a very regular occurrence at Junior Eurovision, and they will most likely be having a national final, which you might call Junior Vidbeer. Although, given the current circumstances, it's probably going to be more scaled down, or maybe they're just going to internally select someone. We don't really know. But I think they're going to have like a national final still, albeit a more toned down one, I suppose. And finally, for now, we have the United Kingdom, who are probably going to be going internal. As I recall, the head of delegation for the UK at JESC is probably still Lee Smithers. And there's that. And he was also part of the song selection process last year, and look where that went, i.e. very well. So with that, we actually have some good news, which is that we have the entire Big Five in Junior Eurovision for the first time ever. Now, obviously, like I said, we have France, we have Germany, we have Italy, we have Spain, and we have the UK. Now, because Germany only debuted in 2020, so this really meant that they couldn't. Obviously, they weren't doing Junior Eurovision before that, so a whole Big Five at Junior wasn't really possible. But and then in 2022, when the UK came back, Germany decided to withdraw. But this year they're not withdrawing, so for the first time in Junior Eurovision history, we will have the entire Big Five in the contest, which is lovely to see. So those are the countries that are pretty much confirmed. But we also have some countries that I think are pretty likely, which are Albania and Serbia. Serbia, I think, are actually probably going to do some sort of internal thing. As usual, it's more like a casting and stuff like that. While Albania will be having most likely a rigged national final. If you know, you know. But our last thing I want to talk about in terms of countries that are pretty likely to take part is Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan is always an unknown. Because for Junior, they have to be invited to take part, and so far we haven't really heard anything from Khabara agency about whether they will take part. We hope they do, obviously, the more the merrier, but we just haven't heard anything, so we don't know what's going to happen. I think they will be there, but again, we just have to see what happens. But speaking of countries that may or may not be there, let's talk about some potential debuts and returns to the contest. Now, during the press conference that they held in Liverpool on the 10th, the head of delegation of France, Alexandre Reda-Emile, actually said that if they could have 30 countries in the contest, it would be amazing. But looking at what we've got so far, if we get 20, it will be a miracle, because you can see at the bottom there that a lot of countries have already expressed their non-interest or lack of ability to participate. And I'll go through those, but first let's go through some more positive stuff. First off, Azerbaijan. This one's kind of an unknown because Azerbaijan hasn't really been like active in Junior Eurovision. Obviously, last year they weren't going to participate because it's Armenia, but obviously they were also in Paris, and we're going back to France. So this could be pretty. This could be pretty likely signs that we'll see Azerbaijan back in the contest, and I like them back in the contest actually because a couple weeks ago I had a little bit of breakthrough that I actually do like their 2021 entry, because it's like one of the only times where you'll ever hear Azerbaijan sing in Azerbaijani. The song itself was actually still just like Swedish composed, but even that sounded better when some of the lyrics were translated into Azerbaijani. And I saw reports that actually Sona Azizova herself, was actually responsible for translating the English into Azerbaijani, so good on Sona. So yeah, Azerbaijan I think are pretty likely to return to Junior Eurovision 2023, but I'm putting them here because this is the debuts return section and not the confirmed country section. Plus, they haven't confirmed. So yeah, I think Azerbaijan is the most likely returning at this point. Another country that a lot of people who follow Junior Eurovision have been talking about is Iceland. Now, you may or may not know this if you haven't followed Junior Eurovision lately, but basically in 2021, Iceland, or more specifically RUV, actually sent a delegation to Paris to observe basically how everything works backstage, for example, and they actually also broadcasted the show I believe on a delay, but it still had really, really high ratings. I think like 96% or something like that. We all know Iceland is like Eurovision crazy. So yeah, one thing that is weird though is that they didn't broadcast nor send a delegation to Yerevan. Maybe it's too expensive to broadcast from there. I don't really know. But this year they're definitely not too expensive because obviously it's just back in France. It's not not that far away from Paris. So yeah, they should be able to at the very least broadcast it. And actually, in an article with, I believe, Eurofestival.es, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, they said in an interview that actually they might plan some sort of national final for Junior Eurovision, kind of maybe like a Junior Song of a Captain type thing. And I suspect maybe they took this year off to kind of evaluate how they're going to go about this national final, but we don't know that for sure yet. I think it's pretty likely, but yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. And Alexandra Reda Emil did say in the press conference that they are trying to get new countries to join Junior Eurovision. So we have to see what happens. And frankly, if there's any country that's going to debut, I think the most likely is Iceland. One bonus thing I want to talk about is the Faroe Islands. This is a very, very interesting one because they have had talk lately of trying to enter the EBU so they can take part in adult Eurovision because obviously Riley is actually from the Faroe Islands, but he represented Denmark, and during which Iceland actually gave points to Denmark, and they were actually the only country to do so, but I'll get to that in my Eurovision 2023 full review video. But back to Junior Eurovision though, you have to consider, of course, that Denmark isn't in the contest anymore. They left basically after 2005 and never really looked back. And they've been very steadfast on, absolutely making sure that they're never going to participate ever and ever again. So yeah, we won't see Denmark in Nice, but we could see Faroe Islands in Nice because the keyword could, because remember Wales? Wales took part in 2018 and 2019 back when the UK wasn't participating. So a similar case could be made for this because the Welsh broadcaster isn't in the EBU either. S4C or Chanel Pedwar Cymru isn't in the EBU, but it's the same case for the Faroe Islands. Their broadcaster KVF isn't in the EBU either, but they could still participate if they are invited to because Denmark aren't doing it. So it's not impossible, but yeah, it's not super likely at this point. I haven't seen them talk about Junior at all, but if there's any Eurovision events that they can take part in the near future, it's Junior Eurovision. So after that, speaking of Nordic countries, there's one I want to talk about, and that's Sweden. But I actually have a dedicated slide for this, so let's skip over Sweden for now. After that, some other potential debut countries are the first one is Estonia, because actually, if you didn't know, they're the only Baltic country to have never taken part in Junior. But one thing that they have said is that they aren't really taking the view that Junior Eurovision is treating kids incorrectly or poorly, but what they've always said pretty much is that they just can't afford it, but they also don't rule out doing it in the future. So they could be actually having conversations with the EBU right now, and Estonia could debut in Junior Eurovision. We don't really know. They haven't said anything about it. We'll just have to see what happens. Again, it's only June right now, so we barely know anything. So yeah, after that we have Luxembourg. I already talked about this in the video, but what I didn't talk about in that video is that the broadcaster of Luxembourg, RTL, are actually really rich. So that kind of changes things. So they're easily able to afford to do junior because they have the money. So I don't know if they will do it again, but if they want to, they certainly can afford to do it, and it would be nice to see Luxembourg send a song in Luxembourgish to Junior Eurovision. Plus, don't forget, this year Junior Eurovision is being hosted in Nice. That's France, and that's just right next door to Luxembourg, so they don't even need to fly there. They can just drive a van or something to Palace Nicaea or whatever. So yeah, it's actually logistically, I think it would actually surprisingly make sense if Luxembourg did Junior Eurovision on the first year of them returning to Eurovision. So we'll see what happens. But Luxembourg and Junior Eurovision. Could you imagine? Also, can you imagine Slovakia doing Junior Eurovision? Now, obviously, the leadership has changed, but for some reason, in 2019 and 2021, the broadcaster of Slovakia, RTVS, actually said that they are looking into debuting in Junior Eurovision. But which is interesting because at the time they kept saying that there's no interest in Eurovision in Slovakia, and then they suddenly randomly say that we might do Junior Eurovision. Obviously, that didn't happen. But this year actually last year they changed leadership at RTVS, so we'll see what happens. We'll say that I don't think this is going to happen, but when it does happen, I would not be that surprised. So those are the countries that I think could have a tiny sliver of a chance to return or debut at Junior Eurovision, minus Sweden, which I'm going to talk about later. But for now, let's go through very quickly some of the countries that aren't taking part in Junior Eurovision 2023. Right, in order, first off, let's start with Denmark. Like I said earlier, Denmark are very clear that they are never going to return to Junior Eurovision ever, because literally the day after Junior Eurovision 2022 ended, DR was like, oh, we are not returning to Junior Eurovision. Thanks, we know that. You don't have to tell us that immediately after the contest ends. Another country with a somewhat similar situation is Norway. Historically, they've since 2005, they've always kind of denounced Junior Eurovision, but recently they seem to have kind of changed their mind because they're apparently looking into reforming MGP Junior, which is kind of the thing that inspired Junior Eurovision to begin with. And they've actually said that while they probably won't be returning in the next few years, they don't rule out returning to the contest. So that is very interesting, and maybe one day in the 2020s we'll be seeing Norway return to Junior. Who knows? Another country in the Nordics, of course, is Finland, and it's another similar case to Norway, actually. Traditionally they would trot out the line that Junior Eurovision doesn't treat kids properly, but this year they actually just said that it's mostly a matter of resources. In fact, I'll just read out the full quote. They said that right now we have no plans to attend Junior Eurovision. As it is, we don't have any chance to participate in Junior Eurovision song contests. Right now, it's mostly a matter of resources and not the quote ended, but and not Junior Eurovision not treating kids right or whatever. So yeah, maybe one day we'll see Finland do junior, but right now I think they're busy trying to win Eurovision. So we'll see what happens. Another country that hasn't that's probably not going to return for quite a while is Bulgaria. Yeah, they said on Twitter that they don't have any plans of returning. And that's that. They don't even have money to attend adult Eurovision. Why do you expect that they can do junior, right? Another country from the Balkans, although some debate whether it's in the Balkans, but anyway, another kind of Slavic language speaking country is Slovenia. Gosh, that was a terrible segue. But yeah, Slovenia is also not doing Junior Eurovision. There was speculation, I think maybe last year, that they would return, but that turned out not to be, and that turns out also not to be the case this year either. So another country who doesn't have the funding to do junior, which is the reason why a lot of these aren't doing it, are Switzerland, Lithuania, and Czechia. All of these, they're basically just saying they can't afford to do Junior Eurovision because they're focusing more on the adult contest, which is fair enough. With the exception of North Macedonia, but North Macedonia is kind of their own thing. So yeah, with that said, we're not seeing Denmark, Norway, Finland, Bulgaria, Slovenia, Switzerland, Lithuania, and Czechia, and I assume the list is just going to grow from here. So, with that said, let's move on to another country which I find to be very unfortunate to not be doing Junior Eurovision 2023, and that is Sweden. Now, one thing about Sweden is that they are actually the most proactive country in Junior Eurovision, where Denmark and Norway basically just left in 2005 or after 2005. Sweden actually did junior all the way up to 2014. And when being asked about Junior Eurovision in recent years, they don't ever really talk about the whole treating kids wrong thing. Instead, they always just say that they're not doing it. They usually just don't really give an explanation as to why. So yeah, it's actually if there's any country that's going to return to Junior Eurovision from the Nordic countries, it would be Sweden. So let's go through these points one by one. The first one is that they're hosting Eurovision 2024. Now, since around 2017, the EBU has successfully gotten every single Eurovision host country of the next year to take part in Junior Eurovision this year. So basically, Portugal took part in Junior Eurovision 2017, and they are still doing it until now, minus I think 2020. Israel even took part in Junior Eurovision in 2018. In 2019, we saw the Netherlands, but the Netherlands have been at every single contest, so does it really count? In 2021, we saw the return of Italy to Junior Eurovision. And in 2022, we saw the return of the UK to Junior Eurovision. And, obviously Ukraine had already been around quite proactively as well. So, this year, I think a lot of us had this expectation that maybe the EBU could kind of get Sweden back in Junior Eurovision. But, obviously that didn't really happen. So, another thing I want to talk about is that Sweden, as we all know from the adult contest, are very jury friendly. This is important to Sweden at Junior Eurovision because with the current voting system, the televote is a lot more normalized, a lot more even than they are in the adult contest. So this means that the jury in Junior Eurovision actually has more power than the jury in adult Eurovision. So, for example, in 2023, for example, not 2023, 2022, I think the entire top 7 or top 6 were exactly the same as the jury top 6 or 7. So, I think, they're even like when the UK won the televote, they still didn't really score more than fifth place because of the jury rating them fifth place. So yeah, the jury actually has more power in Junior Eurovision, and if there's any country that's jury friendly in the idol contest, it's Sweden. So naturally, you'd expect Sweden to do really well in Junior Eurovision, but despite that, I think yeah, they just can't return right now, and I'll explain why later. And the third point I already talked about, they're the most proactive Nordic country in Junior Eurovision. And another thing that's interesting is that they have to send a Swedish language song to Junior, because of the language rule in Junior Eurovision. If you ask me, I think the language rule in Junior is good actually, because you know, a lot of them are young and maybe don't have a lot of access to how to learn how to speak English. So certainly they're able to enunciate more clearly if they're, you know, singing in their own language. So to me, it makes sense for Junior, but for adult, I think I would prefer not having a language rule because, you know, artistic freedom and all that. But yeah, as we now know, however, Sweden aren't going to do Junior Eurovision 2023, and the reason for that was not actually given when ESC Plus asked them, but basically I talked to a Swede, Swedish Eurofan actually, and he told me that basically SVT don't have a lot of funding right now, so I suspect that could be why. And one thing to be noted is that actually one thing that's very interesting about Sweden is that they had their own junior Melody Festivalen, which was called Lilla Melody Festivalen, spelled Lilla, in a Melody Festivalen. It was used kind of intermittently for the selection for Junior, and I suspect that if they wanted to return, I think they probably would host something like a Lilla Melody Festivalen as well, and you know, they just don't have the money for that because obviously they're hosting Eurovision, and you know, hosting in an arena like Friends Arena is probably going to be pretty expensive. So yeah, we're not seeing them in Nice, unfortunately. However, like I said earlier, if there's any country that's going to return to Junior one year, it's probably going to be Sweden. So with that said, let's get on to the rule changes of Junior Eurovision this year, which we have one main one that everyone is talking about, but I think a lot of them are misconstruing it. But basically a few days ago, like I said, RTVE, which is a Spanish broadcaster, they put out an article calling for castings applications, basically. And one thing that they mentioned in their article is that the EBU has introduced a series of changes, blah, 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 which specify that the performances on stage must be carried out live. In addition, no processor will be allowed for pitch corrections or full screen insertion of video clips as part of stage performances. Music video clips must be authorized for use on the voting platform, the online voting platform. Now, a lot of people have misconstrued the line performances on stage must be carried out live as live vocals. But if you look at literally the line after that, it specifies what they're trying to ban, basically. There will be they won't allow pitch corrections, which basically just means auto-tune, and full screen insertion of video clips. If you recall the Polish performance last year, you know, To the Moon, at the start and end, basically, they decided to put parts of the music video and also I think one clip where they were in like school uniforms. So yeah, I think that's more precisely what they're trying to ban, because obviously that's not live. They pre-recorded that for like cinematic effect or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think that's more what they're trying to ban, rather than vocals on the backing track. You know, if anything, live having some vocals on the backing track will be good, because younger performers tend to be more easily nervous, and so some backing vocals on the backing track would actually help. And so a lot of people are wondering why this is being implemented in junior first and before adult Eurovision. And my answer to that is that they're not implementing it. They're only implementing the fact that you have to have the entire performance live in studio or in the arena or whatever, rather than cutting away to some music video. So that is how I'm reading it. Unless specified otherwise, and they love to specify otherwise, I'm not reading this as live vocals. There's a huge debate actually over, at least at adult Eurovision, whether there should be all live vocals or allowing some degree of backing vocals. That's not the debate I want to get into here, but basically, for this particular thing, I'm not reading it as requiring live vocals, but rather just the performance has to be live in person in the Palais Nicaea in France. So that's how I'm reading it. If you disagree, do let me know in the comments and how you're reading the whole statement. But in the meantime, that's all we know so far about Junior Eurovision 2023 as of early June of 2023, and rest assured more episodes will be coming as soon as I find the time for it. So if you're interested, you can follow Ranina, the Georgian selection, which is happening tonight. But otherwise, in the meantime, thank you for watching. Like this video if you enjoyed my commentary. Subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of what we know so far videos. And I'll see you next time.